the next panelist is Sara Takaki. Many of you will know Sara. She is with one of Canada's largest pension funds, HOOPP, but in a prior role, she played a key role in the expert panel on sustainable finance task force the federal government launched, and she had a lot of involvement on that and was exposed to maybe more insight than any single brain in Canada in terms of good ideas for finance to help to reinforce the sustainable economy and natural capital. So I'll pass it over to Sara.
Thanks very much, Toby. So as Toby mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Responsible Investing at HOOPP, the Healthcare of Ontario Pension Plan. And we manage approximately $94 billion on behalf of the healthcare workers in this province. And we care deeply about delivering on the pension promise and providing retirement security to healthcare workers, especially now. So a good place to begin might be what integration can look like for investors like pension plans. When we think of ESG integration, we typically focus on risk and typically focus on the pre-investment phase. However, investors can also factor in environmental considerations into investment strategy, corporate engagement programs, view it as a potential source of alpha. It can be integrated into total risk analysis and portfolio management activities like sustainability programs and value creation projects. So integration can actually be applied quite broadly, and to enable it, investors require certain inputs and tools, including good data, knowledgeable advisors, and useful benchmarks and standards. So I'm going to touch briefly on each one of those three things. First, data. For public markets investments, investors have often had to rely on self-reported data from companies, and the availability and quality of this data has sometimes been a challenge. But we're seeing new types of data become available and more accessible, like geospatial data, and new analytical functionality through leveraging technologies like natural language processing. And this is really opening up new sources of information and enabling new insights for investors to use. Moving on to knowledgeable advisors. For private investments, investors frequently work with external service providers. Think accountants, auditors, technical advisors, law firms, etc. And the expert panel on sustainable finance highlighted the importance of having a knowledgeable financial support ecosystem to help mainstream sustainable finance and make ESG integration the norm. And so as an example from some of the conversations I heard as being part of the expert panel secretariat, I heard companies talk about how our changing climate is already affecting the useful life of certain assets. And so factoring this into the financial information investors receive, financial statements, audits, is really critical. And I know we're kind of hearing about some of that work going on in this space today. And so finally, benchmarks and standards. So pension plans have to invest in order to be able to deliver on the pension promise. And essentially every investment has environmental risks or impacts. These can be direct or indirect, positive or negative, and often both. So resources like standards or frameworks can be really useful to make sense of the data, to enable comparison across companies and determine whether an investment fits with an investor's objectives and risk appetite. I do have to say that on the flip side, if there are too many standards, then there are really no standards at all, so that can be a challenge as well. And so to wrap up, I think that we are increasingly appreciating the interconnectedness of the health of society, the natural environment, the real economy, and capital markets. And while we've known certain things have value, they've been challenging to value. And so I think we'll see ESG integration approaches evolve and potentially expand as the data continues to improve. The financial support ecosystem continues to advance in these areas, and we continue to coalesce around useful standards. Thanks.